17:8-16. Then the word of the Lord came to him, Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to feed you. So he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, Bring me a little water in a vessel that I may drink. And as she was going to bring it, he called to her and said, Bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. And she said, As the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. And now I am gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, Do not fear, go and do as you have said, but first make me a little cake of it and bring it to me, and afterward make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of flour shall not be spent, and the jug of oil shall not be empty until the day that the Lord sends rain upon the earth. And she went and did as Elijah said. And she and he and her household ate for many days. The jar of flour was not spent, neither did the jug of oil become empty, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
And now Pastor Jay is going to speak on God's heart for the least.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to preach on the narrative while I'm here. I usually don't preach a narrative, as in narrative means stories of the Bible. So today is actually a story. So if this will be a new preaching for me a little bit, because I really don't preach too much from stories. But I think for like a month I'm gonna just try to preach from the stories. If you don't like my sermon, just bear with me. Too bad. Just pray for me that I preach well. I gotta read some books too. Like I gotta read how to preach narratives, because I think stories are really cool. And I feel like the time I've been here, I haven't really been preaching out of Old Testament much. So I picked Old Testament passage. So let's pray. Father, we thank you for bringing us here. Father, we pray that we would understand your heart for the least of these. Would you help these passages, your word, your precious word, come alive? And would you help us to really fall in love with who you are, really see your heart behind everything. Pray this in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Let me give you a background of this story, basically. Elijah was a prophet. And I know all of you guys, most of you guys grew up in the church, and these are the stories that you only hear when you're in Sunday school, and you don't hear about it too much. But let's go back to Sunday school, kind of. So here's Elijah, right? Elijah is a prophet, and there's a wicked king. Does anybody know who the wicked king is that Elijah had to confront a lot? His name started with an A. Second letter H.
Ahab.
Thank you, Ahab. Ahab. Not Ahab, Ahab. Ahab may be a Korean pronunciation of it. So Ahab, just kidding. So there is an evil king Ahab, and because of the evil king, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, and he said there will be a famine in the land. In the land, rain's not gonna come. And it's kind of, for us, rain not coming is a blessing for most of us, isn't it? When you want to go to retreat, what do you pray for? God, please don't let it rain. When you go to Princeton volleyball tournament, what do you pray for? God, please don't let it rain. Not raining is a blessing for us, but in their time, not raining is a curse. Why? Because they're mostly agricultural families, agricultural land. So farming is something very important for them. And for them, water didn't come like in a faucet where we turn it on and the water just pours out. For them, water came from heaven, from God. So for them, it was very clear that God gave water and God didn't give water. And when the rain didn't come, imagine you have a restaurant, right? And you don't have any electricity. You can't do business. That's how they feel. When you can't farm, when the rain doesn't come and the crops isn't growing, people are having famine in the land and people are going broke. And in the time of God doing this, there is this widow. And I don't think we know her name because the Bible doesn't tell us, but she lives in Zarephath. And there's a widow, And this widow, is poor. If you become a widow in the Old Testament, what's supposed to happen is there's supposed to be a kinsman redeemer. So for example, let's say my brother's wife died and I wasn't married. I'm supposed to marry my brother's wife. And the reason is, I know this sounds kind of weird for us, but the reason is so that your brother's wife will be taken care of. Because back in the days before us, you know how you guys, like in the modern day, women get to work and make money, right? Back in the days, men had to provide and actually support the woman. So guess what happens if you're a widower? You have no source of income or food or whatnot. And to this lady, it shows that if she doesn't have a husband when her husband passed away, it's an indication that she might not have a relative. So imagine this lady. She has no way of making any money. And in that time, if you're a widow, one of the ways that you made money was you slaved yourself at another family and you did housework for them. Sometimes even sleeping with the guys in the house. Kind of sad, I understand. And that's how people usually make money. And in this time, when economy is not doing well for the nation, people like these widowers don't get a job at all. It's kind of like a homeless person. When you beg for money, when the nation's doing well, maybe you might get some crumbs. But if the nation's not doing well, you don't get anything. I don't know if you guys remember 2008. There's like this big push from the New York City government. New York City mayor's like, we're gonna close down, those shelters and food pantry places that's supported by the government because they're like, we're running out of money. We don't have money to support homeless people. And in this similar way, in this time when there's famine in the land, this widower, and she even has a son, does not have enough provision. So Elijah comes to her because God said, go to this lady. She's a widow, she's poor, she doesn't have much. Go to her, she's desperate right now. And Elijah's going to her, and when Elijah met her, she had a little bit of morsel, like leftover, little crumbs of food and little bread that she had. And then this is what Elijah says. Elijah says to her, and you know what? Elijah's been eating fine. God's been providing for him. He's been eating fine. He comes to her, probably still not that skinny, probably, just looking normal and whatnot. And this probably lady who looks like a stick, he comes to her and says, give me that bread. Give me that oil. And give me that bread and morsel. And what's interesting is right before this, God actually told Elijah, I prepare for you a widow who's going to provide for you. You ran out of food, I'm going to give you food. And it's going to be through widow. And can you imagine? And then he's like, give me some food. And you know what the widow says? The widow says, all I have is this morsel and bread. You want this? This is my last meal I'm going to have with my son. And once I'm done, I'm just going to go, starvation mode and die. She's like suicidal. She's like, I'm going to have this so that this will be my last one before I die. She's literally suicidal. She's like in her worst of the worst. Like, you got to imagine where she is. And in the midst of that, can you imagine God coming to you? Let's say you're poor, you're broke right now, you're out of job, and God's like, you know how you have that $20 right now that could feed you for a day or whatever? I want that $20. In that moment, some of you guys would be like, I think a lot of us would be like, God, you're a freaking mean person. Maybe, some of you guys were, some of you guys nicer way of saying it, right? God, you're so mean. What do you mean you want my last $20? And this is what's going on in Widow's heart. But yet, even in the midst of it, she goes, okay, I'll give it to you. I'm just going to die. And in here, I want to kind of teach you guys something what's happening. God's not testing her to steal something from her. God's testing her heart to show her that God provides. And God's testing her to see if she trusts that God could provide. Because God's heart is for the least of these. And this is what Psalm 68:5 says. And this is God talking about himself. It says, I'm a father to the fatherless, protector of widows. Is a God in his holy habitation. He's a father to the fatherless. If you don't have a father, he wants to be your father. If you're a widow, when people could take from you and steal from you, if you're a widower, I'm sure robbers would love to come to your house because you're not protected at all. But then God says, I am the protector of the widow. I'm a God in his holy habitation. God's heart over and over throughout the Bible, you know what he says? He says, take care of the fatherless. Take care of the widows in the house. Widows in your church. Widows outside the church. Because that's where my heart is. And he says, do justice. take care of those least before me. I don't know if you guys remember my last week's sermon was about, Jesus says, where were you when I was thirsty? Where were you when I was naked? What you have not done to the least of this, you have not done unto me. And in God's heart, there is a strong connect with those who are considered an outcast, those who are disconnected from, and who are vulnerable and whatnot. And that's who God is really after. And to her, in that moment, she might have been going, like, oh my gosh, God, you're so mean. But yet, in God's heart, He's not doing that because He's mean. He's trying to see her heart and teach her that, do you trust me? Even though nothing's being provided for you, do you still know that I long for you and I love you and I'm going to take care of you? And this is what God's heart is. In time of despair, God is sending help. And God is sending help this way. Like, I have this last food. God's help is, give me that food. I want that last food that you have. And it sounds so mean sometimes, when you don't know God. But yet He's testing us usually to see if you trust Him. Two, the testing usually comes before a breakthrough. Something's about to happen, and usually right before that moment, testing comes. He wants to see if you're going to remain faithful. Let me give you a story. This is throughout the Bible. God doing this a little bit. He does this to her, right? He could have went to anyone and whatnot. The whole nation's not doing well. Ahab the king is like the worst king ever in the history of Israel and whatnot. And Ahab, what's interesting? Ahab was considered a great king outside of Israel. He created a lot of great stuff. And everyone around Israel looked at Ahab and went, wow, great king. But in the sight of God, he was not a great king at all because he worshipped other gods. You guys know what happens when you have, Israel lived in a farming, agricultural society, right? Do you guys understand the concept of tithing in that time? It's kind of like this. You farm, right? You farm, and then you have enough food to harvest from spring to maybe fall, late fall, right? And for the winter, you're supposed to store away whatever you got from the spring, summer, fall, probably fall, because food perish, probably from fall. And fall, you don't get that much harvest anyway, but you get a little bit. You're supposed to put it in a storeway, and then you're supposed to eat that during the winter. So for 3-4 months, you're eating that leftover, and you're eating very little, and you're portioning yourself very well. And at the spring, there's usually fig trees giving figs, and there's different kind of harvests coming out for the spring. And as that first spring comes, your first thought is, I've been starving, my families have not had enough food. Finally, God's giving us food. You know what God says in that moment? Like, that first fruit is mine. Give to me. And then, if you don't know God, you go, God, you're so mean. Why do you want my first fruit? I've been waiting and starving for the whole winter. Now you want my first fruit? You're a mean God. Some of us could think like that. But yet what he's saying is, do you trust me? Who gives rain to the land? Who gives sun its place? Who's the one that lets the fruit and the farming all grow? Do you trust me that I will provide for you? Even though this is the first fruit, there will be many fruits afterward. And tithing is a concept of trusting in the Lord. And this has been the story of the whole Bible. Before a breakthrough comes, he always goes, he tests us, and he goes, do you trust me? Do you love me? Do you have faith in me that I will provide? And this is what happens. Sometimes in modern day, there's people in relationship. I meet people in relationship. I usually meet people who are younger than me, and sometimes I'm like, man, you need to break up with that other person. They're in this emotional turmoil. They're like, the other person is totally damaging you emotionally and stressing you out, and it's just not good for you. And to a point where you're physically damaged. Not damaged, damaged is not a good word. Physically harmed by the other person. I even met a person, I even met a girl, she's like, yesterday I had a domestic violence, I called the cops on a guy, and they had a joint account. And because they had a joint account, the guy, when she broke up with him, he emptied him. And he has total right to them in your joint account. And she's like, I'm broke out of nowhere. I've been abused. Cops been called. And, people go through that. And I'm like, God has a better plan for you. And I will tell them, God has a better plan for you. God has a better person for you. You do not need to stay with that person. But in that moment, they're so in love with God, they don't want to give up what's so precious to them. They're like, no, but you don't know, this is so precious to me. And God's like, I have someone so much better. But yet, in your hindsight, in your sight of the present, you can't see anything. You can't see beyond what I have for you. It's almost like that illustration that I told you guys about. Remember that story where, you love Big Mac and like your father wants to introduce you to Kyrie and you love your Big Mac and you're like, Big Mac is the bomb. And you just eat it and eat it and eat it. And then one day your father comes to you and says, stop eating that Big Mac. I'm going to take you out. Nothing could beat Big Mac. No, I'm going to take you out. Stop eating it. Nothing can beat Big Mac. Big Mac is my life. Big Mac is the bomb. Big Mac is so good. No, you're getting huge and bad. You're getting diabetes and stuff. You're like, no, Big Mac is good. And then eventually, he's like, he takes it away. And it's a testing, isn't it? And then the father goes, I'm going to bring you to a curry kitchen. And they're going to cook the curry in the charcoal. It's going to taste so good. You have never tasted before. And it's like sometimes God tests us. He's like, give me that morsel of food. Give me that bread before you eat because you don't know what I have prepared for you. I am testing you to see, do you trust me? Do you love me? Because my heart is for you and I don't want you to keep eating that junk food. I don't want you to keep dating that wrong person because I have a better plan for you. But yet, many of us don't trust the Lord. And this could have been what she was happening, but for her, she trusted. Or maybe she didn't even trust. She was just morbid. And she's like, you know what? This was my last food. I'm suicidal anyway. Have my food. The world's not kind to me anyway. Eat it and I hope you die too. I don't know. Maybe that was for her. Who knows? But she did. She gave Elijah the food, right? And this is what's happening. You know what's interesting about testing from God is this. My mother-in-law, my wife and my mother-in-law, they grew up pretty well. Like, as in, like, my mother-in-law had a lot of money. Like, she had, like 3 nail salons in the city, in different places. And she was, like, raking a lot of money. Like, my wife was driving, like, Beamer 7 Series. 3 Series. Okay, maybe they're not that rich. Just kidding. She was driving 3 Series. She wasn't even earning a penny at that time. Her mom's like, here's a car, take whatever you want. But then, you know what happened to her one day? Something happened and she like had to declare bankruptcy and she lost it all. And when she lost it all, in the midst of her bankruptcy, in the midst of her like going from really rich overnight to really poor, they have 4 people in the family. They lived in 1 bedroom, right? Yeah, they were living in like 1 bedroom. I think they even lived in like someone else's house. A little bit or no? No? Okay, I don't know. They were like, went from like big house, 1 bedroom for 4 people. People are sleeping in the living room. Crazy, like they're in the hood. Really bad times. And then in that time, her mom used to go to morning prayer. And I don't know if she went to pray. Like I can imagine her. She's probably like, I hate you, God. The whole time. Why did you bring this to me and whatnot? But that time of hardship, she actually drew closer to God. I mean, I'm sure she complained. I'm sure she cried. I'm sure she was praying. And in that time, she was drawing closer to God. And it was really like, I met her at that time, and she didn't really like me because I'm a pastor, and she doesn't want her daughter to marry a pastor. But at the same time, like, I could see she was like praying more at that time, And she was drawing closer to God. And right now, she's doing much better financially. But she didn't know what God protected her from at that time. Because right now, is it New York City or New York State? New York City? New York City, New York State is actually going after certain parts of nail salon businesses. And like if you're Korean, we pay them off the book, right? Like we don't really do taxes. So imagine you owe tax for like 30 people for past 10, 20 years or 7 years or whatever. A lot of money. And if you owe money to the government, and so a lot of stores in those places where she used to own the nail salon started to close down because they couldn't pay the money back. Not only if she had the business, not only would she have went broke and lost everything, even if she went broke and even declared bankruptcy, if you owe money to the state, your money's not resolved. You still have to pay them back. And she was just saying, if I still had those stores, 1, I would have been broke. 2, no matter how much I made, I still have to pay them back, and I would have been broke all of my life till I die. And looking back, she goes, that was actually a blessing from God. At that time, I thought it was a curse. Looking back, it really was a blessing. And she starts thanking the Lord even more. And right now, they're doing much better than before. They're not as well off as at that time, but they're doing very well, you know, living comfortably, and they're doing okay. And it's kind of like that, you know, like when God brings us through hardship, you know, do you know that God's heart is for you? Even sometimes, you know, like you broke up with someone and you're like cursing God, you know, God's like, man, I have so much better things for you. You know, sometimes you lose a job and you're like, God, you suck and whatnot. God's like, I have something better planned for you. And that's the heart of God. Like he's for the broken, he's for the weak, he's for those who are disenfranchised, his heart is for those who are hurting. And I wanted to share a clip with you. This is Tony Campolo. He's awesome. And I'm hoping that this video, his illustration, could kind of picture for you God's heart, and this should be our heart. If you, Eric, if you go to the next slide, it should already be in there. Before. That picture, yeah. There should be a button you can click if you move the mouse to the middle. Oh, it doesn't? It worked for me. Go to YouTube for me, and then type in Tony Campolo, Campolo. Tony, Tony space Campolo, Campolo. Birthday parties.
Birthday party?
Yeah. This story is awesome. I hope you guys enjoy it. And this really shows God's heart of the broken. And then you can turn the sound on. A little bit louder. He wasn't in Hawaii.
Hey, sometimes you get Chicago, sometimes you get Honolulu. You got